Ladies and gentlemen, I would like to welcome you very warmly to our today's webinar on Brazil's bioenergy success. We will wait for another minute for all the participants to join. I can see that the number of participants is going up, so we'll wait a little bit and then we'll kick it off. So thanks for your patience. Okay, let's go for it. So, welcome once again. My name is Christian Rakosch, and we are inviting you today to a webinar on Brazil's bioenergy success, insights from industry, policy, and academia. And I'm very fortunate to have three outstanding speakers today on our panel that will explain the Brazilian bioenergy success story from different points of views. From the point of view of industry, Bruno Alves is from Meridiana, a think tank that is focused on policies related to critical minerals, agriculture, and energy, and he is head of government relations. Otávio Igreja is from the Ministry of Foreign Affairs from the Renewable Energy Division, and he will give you an in-depth view on the role of policies for the Brazilian bioenergy success. And finally, Glaucia Mendes Souza will give you the view of a scientist who has a very deep understanding of the impacts of bioenergy in the various different dimensions. So I should mention that today's webinar is organized between the World Bioenergy Association together with the Society of Bioenergy. And Glaucia Mendes Souza has been president of this association, has helped us a lot in setting this up. So maybe to start with, let me just give you a very quick review of who the World Bioenergy Association is for those of you who are here for the first time in one of our webinars. We're a global organization. Our membership is both bioenergy associations and enterprises that are active in bioenergy. And our mission is to promote the sustainable development of bioenergy globally. We believe bioenergy will make a very important contribution to decarbonizing our energy sector, to changing from fossil energy to renewable energy. And we try to support that by sharing knowledge across the board on markets, on technologies, by creating connections between companies and researchers, between policymakers of different countries, between organizations, associations that are advocating for bioenergy. We provide platforms for showcasing products and services. We publish industry reports. We have a annual global bioenergy statistical report that we are publishing. And more recently, we have been really active in running webinars to make the knowledge of our members available across the globe. And we're quite proud that up to 70 different countries are present in our webinars at a time. So we have really a global outreach. So welcome to all of you. Also, welcome to the World Bioenergy Association. Please feel free to contact us if you consider to become a member of this resourceful community. Thank you very much. And with this, I would like to give the floor to our first speaker, Bruno Alves from Meridiana. Bruno, The floor is yours.
Thank you, Christian. You all can see it, isn't it? Okay, great. So, good morning, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here and to be part of this session discussing Brazil's bioenergy experience as a global case study. Many thanks, Professor Glaucia. Many thanks, Christian, Alejandra, and also Tavio. It's a pleasure to be here with you. Today, I will show you how decades of innovation, policy, and investment have positioned Brazil as a leader in renewable energy. But to start, I would like to say a few words about Meridiana, the institution I represent. Meridiana is a Brazilian center-right think tank committed to advancing national competitiveness through evidence-based analysis, reliable data, and actionable policy proposals. Well, Brazil's journey starting in 1931. This is something that normally we don't say about it. We had a mandate of 5% ethanol content in imported gasoline and introduced a 10% blend requirement for official government vehicles at that time. And this is something quite remarkable. In 1975, we also had Proálcool. Proálcool became one of the world's first large-scale biofuel programs. And after that, as part of it, in 1980, we had the vegetable oils program, is actually part of Proálcool, and gave us in Brazil a lot of knowledge about this. At that moment, what was really important for Brazil was energy security. Well, since then, we've been built a long-term policy foundation to RenovaBio in 2017 to Route 2030, and more recently, the Fuel of the Future Law and also Energy Transition Acceleration Program. So we had a lot of different experiences, a lot of different knowledge becoming reality. And right now, we are actually discussing here is policies related to first low emission, different agenda related to energy and energy transition as part of the whole idea of good policies related to energy in Brazil. So if I had to say as a key takeaway of this part of my presentation, what we had is policy consistency has been central to Brazil's success. Everything that we had since 1931 was directly related to the ability of our consistency and also ability to discuss politically what we have related to energy transition, security, and food security also. So, well, the results are quite remarkable of what we had here in Brazil. Since 2003, ethanol and biodiesel only have avoided more than 1 billion tons of CO2 emissions. That means cleaner air, fewer respiratory diseases, and up 90 fewer GHG emissions compared to gasoline. On the social side, the sector supports over 1.5 million jobs, many in rural areas. Economically, it contributes to Brazil's trade balance and attracts billions in private investment. Regarding the innovation, we have to say also that we've been discussing quite frankly in Brazil about CCS as a very good opportunity, and also green methanol, maritime use of fuels, renewable diesel, SAF. This is all part of what we've been discussing now here in Brazil related to biofuels. So we have to say that actually one good point related to the biofuels here in Brazil is the ethanol. Brazil's ethanol is unique. We combine sugarcane and second crop corn powered by biomass energy, make it one of the lowest carbon fuels globally. And today, 85% of our light vehicle fleet is flex fuel. Over half of all vehicles fuel consuming is actually ethanol in Brazil, and we had a blend mandate that have just increased from E27 to E30. So while we've been seeing a lot of countries discussing to start a blend mandate, here we are getting to E30 this year. We just had E30. So ethanol is no longer just a fuel in Brazil. It actually became a platform for decarbonization. And this is something actually that I would also like to highlight. And as part of the platform of decarbonization, ethanol are evolving to an integrated biorefinery. Carbon capture and fermentation can be stored in the ground. We've been making investments to convert it into methanol. And we also have the idea, and it's part of the investments we've been seeing here, is to have the ethanol reform into hydrogen. This means that each ethanol plant is a potential hub for CCS, for green methanol and hydrogen, expanding the scope of decarbonization in Brazil. There's one thing that actually is not in this presentation, but I would like also to highlight that is Brazil is the world's second large biodiesel producer with annual production of 7.5 million metric tons. And we also have a new mandate for biodiesel in Brazil, so it's now B15. And biodiesel is actually diversifying feedstocks. So we used to have soybean as the major culture, but we also have now animal fats, content cottonseed oil, and many other opportunities that are actually becoming reality here in Brazil. Well, there's one thing here that actually I also would like to say, and maybe this is my last slide, but I'll spend some time here to explain a little of the way we've been discussing new policies related to biofuels in Brazil. According to our view in Brazil and to our policymakers, aviation is one of the hardest to abate sector, is something that we all know internationally, but here it's getting quite a common sense. So SAF is today the most cost-effective and efficient pathway to reduce emissions in aviation. This is becoming more and more natural when you go to the Congress and we have to talk to policymakers. And Brazil has the feedstock, the industry base, and now the legal framework, we have to say, thanks to the future of the fuel law, to lead the SAF production and be part of it, be a very, very important producer and user of SAF in the world. Beyond the aviation, we are investing in renewable maritime fuels, such as green methanol, just like I told you, and also ammonia. Ammonia is something important for us because it's also part of and related to our agriculture and maybe part of the decarbonization in our food systems. Combined with hydrogen, the solutions straight both the energy and the food systems. And this is also part of our new policies in Brazil. We are connecting food systems and food security, and also life cycle assessment related to this both systems, and also to transport. So we are now discussing new policies related to the transport that actually take into account not just the decarbonization effect, but also the life cycle assessment as part of the decisions that we have to make in our policies. What else? So this integrated approach positions Brazil at the frontier of the global bioenergy innovation, and this is the reason why we've been we came so far related to the discussions. Brazil. So when we take it, when we are considering Brazil as a global model, what can the world learn from Brazil? There are three things that I would like to say. First, the role of long-term stable policy frameworks. This is the most important part of my whole presentation. This is the thing that we have to consider. So first is the role of long-term stable policy framework. Second, the integration of science innovation into regulation. This is part of what we've been discussing here. And third is the ability to scale, aligning competitiveness with sustainability. So the ability to scale is something very important for the sector. As we look toward COP30, Brazil's message is clear. For sure, bioenergy is proven, scalable, and ready to help the world accelerate the energy transition. This is maybe a very strong message and part of what we believe and part of the discussions that we've been having with the politics here in Brazil. So I'm Bruno. Brazil's bioenergy history is about more than clean energy and clean fuels, as I told you. It's about building a development model that integrates energy, security, climate action, and social inclusion. All these aspects are important. All these aspects are part of our discussions here. And this is why our story, in a way, matters to the rest of the world. And it's very good to be here with you and my friends to discuss this. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Bruno. Brilliant. Ladies and gentlemen, I did not mention in the beginning, please feel free to put questions into the chat, and we will give you an opportunity to address our speakers individually. So actually, the idea was that after each speaker, you have the possibility to come up with questions. Now, as I have been announcing this too late, I will come up with the first question, Bruno, and that is, you're talking about many new applications of bioenergy beyond just the individual cars, talking about SAF, about maritime, and even other vectors of energy use. But is there the potential to even further grow bioenergy production in Brazil, being that large already?
Well, these are new markets. That's for sure. We have to develop this, Christian. We still are counting a lot on what we have for the use in light vehicles. That's the reason why we have a V30. That's the reason why we've been investing in infrastructure for the use of bioethanol, E100. And but this is actually that we have to develop. Otherwise, we're gonna have a problem in a few years ahead. We have been developing our production, and in a few years, if we don't have different opportunities for ethanol and biodiesel and other products, what we're going to have is market problem. And it was really hard to solve this without different opportunities and different markets in other countries.
So what you're saying is you rather have a surplus issue than a deficit issue.
Perfect. That's it.
Amazing, amazing. There are two questions now. One is asking how many actual production of SAF do you already have today in Brazil? And if you could say a little bit more about green methanol, how would you produce green methanol?
Okay, green methanol is something that was actually related to the capture of CO2 in our ethanol plants. We have important actors and important industries making investments on this, such as Impasa and also Rising and different actors that are actually investing. And related to SAF, we don't have actually nowadays production of SAF in Brazil. And the reason why it's actually not happening is because we are in the middle of a discussion of new policies. So we already have a mandate for SAF, and it starts in 2027, so 3 years ahead. But we are now discussing internally new policies for the investments to make feasible the investments. That's the reason why we still don't have the production here.
Okay, okay. Brilliant. I think that was it. Thank you so much, Bruno. And maybe at the end, there will be an opportunity for a general discussion. But now I would like to move over to Otávio Igreja. He is from the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, from the Renewable Energy Division. And I must say, I find that quite remarkable that the Ministry of Foreign Affairs has a renewable energy division, because usually that would be in a different ministry. So it already shows that renewable energy has a very high importance for Brazil, also in terms of its external relationships. Otávio, floor is yours.
Thank you, Christian. Just to check, do you hear me well?
We hear you perfectly well.
All right. Thank you very much. Thank you, Christian. Thank you, Alejandra, and the World Bioenergy Association. And I'm very happy and honored to be here alongside Glaucia and Bruno. And very glad to see so many people from around the world on the chat. This is a very interesting opportunity for us. I'm going to share my screen now, and you tell me if it's working. Yes?
Yes, still put it into presentation mode, please. Now it's perfect.
Okay. Yeah? Still in presentation mode?
Yes.
Okay. All right. So I will talk a little bit about that, Christian, about the fact that we have an energy department. I'm going to start just saying that I'm not of course, I'm a diplomat. I'm not a technician in this subject. So I'm talking more of a political and diplomatic point of view of how Brazil's main policies and also international policies value biofuels and the way we work with this topic here at the Brazilian government. So just to begin, a very important point about biofuels in Brazil is that we have a very long history with governance on this topic. So since 1997, we have a National Council for Energy Policy. This council is composed by the President of the Republic, several ministers of state, including the Minister of Mines and Energy, who presides the meetings usually, but also industry, academia, and civil society representatives. So any law, decree on energy, on national energy policy has to go through this council. We also have, since 98, a regulatory agency for petroleum, gas, and biofuels, which is led by the Ministry of Mines and Energy. And in 2004, we established the Energy Research Office, which is a state company that provides services to the Ministry of Mines and Energy with studies and research and helps them develop adequate policies. So under this structure, any national policy that Brazil has and that you will see presented and that Bruno talked about has to undergo a very thorough public consultation through the National Council, very thorough technical and regulatory evaluation, and a very thorough scientific evaluation at the Energy Research Office. So we don't lose any time having to correct so much. Of course, we have to correct our policies every once in a while and improve them, but this allows us to try and make them as robust as possible as soon as they are put in place. So Bruno already talked a little bit about this, but we started initial blending, and he's right when he says that we don't usually talk about it a lot, but we've been trying to say a little bit more about it. We had mandates back in the 1930s, but we really gained traction in 1975 with the Proálcool program. And another turning point was the introduction of flex fuel engines in Brazil. Like Bruno said, over 85% of our fleet is flex fuel. And so with this kind of engine, I can fill my tank with E100, which is 100% ethanol, or the gasoline in Brazil, which is 30% ethanol at any rate. So I can have half the tank with gasoline with E30 and the other half with E100. And that mix is what makes us use what brings us to the data that Bruno shared, that over half of the fuel consumed is ethanol, because we mix E100 with E30 however we want in our cars. And in 2005, we had the biodiesel law introduced biodiesel in our diesel, which is now at 15% mix. That being said, another major turning point was 2017 with the introduction of the National Biofuels Policy, which we call RenovaBio. This policy really made the link between the use of ethanol that we already had with sustainability and carbon emissions reductions. This is in the context of the Paris Agreement, Brazilian NDCs. So we have a greater focus on emissions reduction, and this is what the RenovaBio is for. And so it is based on 3 axes. The first one is the decarbonization targets. So the National Council for Energy Policy sets decarbonization targets that the fuel market must follow for the next 10 years. So this target will then be broken down between the fuel distributors. So they have to meet, depending on the share of the fuel market that the distributor has, he will have to meet a percentage of the national target to reduce emissions. And the biofuels kick in when we go to the second axe, which is the certification of biofuel production. So the ANP sets, which is the regulatory agency, helps to set certain parameters, which include traceability, a ban on the conversion of native vegetation to ensure that we're not expanding land to produce these biofuels, compliance with environmental legislation, and adherence to agroecological zoning. So we have a calculator called RenovaCalc, which calculates the emissions of the biofuel produced in that unit, following these parameters. We follow a life cycle analysis from well to wheel, and then the biofuel producers will receive an efficiency score on their production of biofuels. And the third axis is decarbonization credits. So based on that certification, the producer will be able to issue what we call CBios, which are these credits. They are equivalent to the reduction of 1 ton of CO2 equivalent. And then these credits are issued and sold on the stock exchange market, and they have to be bought by the fuel distributors so that these distributors meet the target I was talking about in the first axis. And if these distributors do not meet their targets, they are subject to fines and sanctions. So it's a way for the producers to have some kind of compensation for the sustainability of their production, and for the distributors to meet their targets. So it's a win-win-win situation. And you can ask whether that the price that the distributors are paying to buy the CBIOs will reflect on the consumer price, and it does. But the calculations that we have is that the increase in price is so small for the consumer that the system works well without affecting the consumer negatively. So in the past 5 years with this system, we've issued over 150 million CBIOs, and that generated a financial volume of $2 to $3 billion. The target for this year is to issue 40 million CBIOs. So this additional revenue helps producers to invest in improving their technology to enhance sustainability and innovate in their production. So that's the RenovaBio system, which was a great landmark for us. And then last year, we've had the Fuel of the Future approved. This allows us to blend ethanol up to 35% in our gasoline. We are 30%. Studies are ongoing on whether we can increase more, but by law, we could mix up to 35%. Biodiesel can also be increased up to 20% with this law. Now it's at 15, but like I said, every increase in blending has to undergo thorough studies and market evaluations on whether it will be possible. The Fuel of the Future also integrated programs of mobility, sustainable aviation fuels, green diesel, carbon capture. So it's a way to integrate the policies that we already had and set targets to establish new policies. We've just had published the decree that regulates biomethane mandate that is mentioned there. We will soon have one on the sustainable aviation fuel. So it's an overarching policy, which is very successful, and it's one of the main drivers here in our government for the energy transition. And market-wise, just to mention, we also have tax incentives for biofuels, as they have a more favorable tax scheme in comparison to fossil fuels. And in public funding, our National Development Bank also prioritizes biofuel production and low emission technologies in its financing. So these are the main policies, and we, as lessons learned, we wanted to highlight the importance of having public consultation, which we have in our council, a well-established regulatory framework, well-established institutional governance, which all of these generate this balanced and predictable public policies. And another important thing that the Ministry of Mines and Energy does very well is to have a communication plan for users, retailers, and taxpayers that raise awareness to the society, domestically and globally, and to the public decision makers about bioenergy's real impacts and benefits. So the government is constantly talking to the private sector and to the regulators and to the producers and distributors to see how we can improve our policies and to communicate the advantages of these policies to promote biofuels. However, before I go to the next slide, like Christian said, Brazil took this to the next step. So we put policy on biofuels at the forefront of our foreign policy as well, not only domestic policy. So we know, I'll try to go through this in the next 5 minutes. We know that there is no international regime for energy, but recently the topic has gained attention, especially in the climate discussions after COP28 with the first global stocktake. But the discussions are very fragmented. So we talk about energy in the G7, the G20, in BRICS, in regional fora here in Latin America, and Africa, and Asia. It's a little bit all over the place. But it's very relevant because we believe that the biofuels can be an important contribution of the global south to global energy transition. So the whole world is talking about energy transitions and looking at alternatives. And we believe that the global south and countries that are resource rich and developing countries have really this potential to contribute with this alternative to the rest of the world. So we think that biofuels are competitive, they're convenient, they're technologically mature because they've been here for a long time. And we've created this acronym which they help to achieve a fair energy transition, which means it will be fast because they're ready to be implemented. It's accessible because they're cost effective. It's inclusive because they generate jobs, they help sustainable development, and it's renewable if you do it sustainably. So the biofuels production and use covers all three aspects of sustainable development. That is something that Brazil has always defended, that you can't. Sustainable development involves sustainability, environmental preoccupations, but it also involves social development and economic development. And we believe biofuels manage to unite all three aspects. So we took forward, since the beginning of the century, a very strong biofuels diplomacy based on these principles that you can see there. And I would say one of the most important ones is that we try to promote technological neutrality and science-based sustainability and carbon intensity criteria, so that countries are evaluated on the realities that they live, because we know there is no one-size-fits-all solutions for everyone. And that's what we try to bring when we promote biofuels. So for all these reasons, because we believe in all the things I've said, Brazil decided to create an energy department, Ministry of Foreign Affairs, which does not mean that the Ministry of Mines and Energy does not also work on this topic and act internationally, but we are in constant coordination with them and other institutions so that we have a solid Brazilian position on this topic. We also participate in the National Council for Energy Policy. So that is, sorry, just 1 second. Sorry, I had an issue here. So from this energy department, which is where I work, we coordinate alongside the Ministry of Mines and Energy and try to be present internationally at different levels. So Brazil is very active in international corporations. We're at the GBEP, which is the Global Bioenergy Partnership under FAO. We are co-founders of the Global Biofuels Alliance. We founded the Biofuture Platform. All these initiatives have been successful, have gained momentum. So GBEP has now 39 partners and 51 observers. The Biofuture Platform is also gaining a lot of traction. The GBA, we've just established our governance framework recently. We work in multilateral fora, so through the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, and we work together with Ministry of Mines and Energy to try and divide and be at all these fora that talk about energy transitions. So we're at the G20 and we hosted the G20 last year, during which we made a summary for policymakers on bioethanol, and this year we're publishing a book on bioethanol for policymakers that we hope to be published before COP30. We hosted the BRICS, in which we managed to talk about, with BRICS countries, to talk about sustainable fuels in their variety. We're also at SEM and MI. And we also try to work bilaterally. So Brazil is very active with bilateral cooperation, capacity building. We've worked with a lot of Asian countries. We have a program called Sustainable Mobility Ethanol Talks, which we held in India, Pakistan, Thailand, Argentina, Guatemala, Costa Rica, Indonesia, Vietnam in the past years. We've had a very fruitful cooperation with India, which helped India establish their blending of ethanol into gasoline, which is already reaching 20%, well before the target, which was 2030. We were deepening cooperation with ASEAN countries, and we're also trying to deepen cooperation with Latin American countries here in our region. And through all of this, we always try to follow the principle that any biofuel production or any sustainable fuel production or energy transition must be adapted to local realities. So we don't believe, when we do bilateral cooperation, that everyone has to follow what Brazil did, or that everyone can follow what Brazil did. We believe that we have to go study the local realities, see the feedstock, see how production can be sustainable, and then go from there with our scientists, our technicians, our local experts to see what can be adapted to that country. Because we know that not every country will have the same conditions to do the same type of biofuel development. And finally, just to finish, I know I'm a little bit over my time. Part of our strategy internationally is to influence carbon accounting metrics and methodologies, because we know that if we have the continuation of this fragmented regulation internationally, we won't be able to compare sustainability metrics and criteria, and this will generate very high costs particularly for producers in developing countries that have a harder time to influence these methodologies and are subject to certain market criteria that can generate difficulties for them to access markets and scale up their production. So we need to be agnostic and technologically neutral in setting these carbon accounting methodologies. We've created, apart from the Energy Department here at the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, a carbon accounting coordination unit to help Brazil position these principles that are highlighted there on the screen in international organizations such as IMO and ICAO and others, any other international platform that is talking about carbon accounting and regulations for fuels, because we believe that we must foster these principles abroad, because that if we don't do that, this may harm producers at home and the sustainability that we've studied for so long here in Brazil for our biofuels. So in conclusion, Brazil understood its vocation for biofuels and worked from there. So we've set a very well-established institutional domestic governance and policies, but we think that without international cooperation, without this that we're doing here, without this type of cooperation, and in all instances, bilateral, multilateral, regional, we won't be able to really achieve the full potential of biofuels. So it's not enough that Brazil has a long history with them, but we need to improve our sustainability, talk to other countries about it, and remember that the fight against climate change and emissions reductions will not be possible if we don't include the whole global community. So this is basically what I wanted to say. I'm sorry I took a little bit longer than expected, and I'm open to any questions. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Otavio. That was really brilliant, and I find it very impressive how professional policy making in Brazil is working. And I must say it makes me a little bit sad to see that the consistency of renewable energy policies that you're talking about is not a general rule, not even in Europe. We see even a slightly similar consistency. At contrary, policies keep changing, and that creates a very confusing environment for businesses. Because if you invest, you always have a long-term horizon. And one of the questions was actually addressing this issue. I mean, we have seen that both in Europe, but even in a more dramatic way in America, how political changes can, turn things upside down. How come that this didn't happen so far in Brazil? You had all kinds of political environments, changing political environments, but the consistency in terms of renewable energy policies was somehow maintained. Do you have an explanation for that?
I think I'm sure there are many interpretations to this question, but from our point of view, I think what helped maintain this consistency is this close relation between the public sector, the civil society, and private sector on this question. So we sort of, because we've always tried to include everyone in the discussion, we've created this kind of national consensus on the topic, which will of course have to be tweaked, and some people will pull towards one side or the other, but kind of we have this understanding that this is important for us economically, for energy transition, and socially, for job creation and sustainable development. And when we have all these three areas working together with the civil society, the private sector, and the public, then it's not a top-down approach where we're going to impose a mandate without looking if the market will be able to meet it, or without seeing if the producers will be able to meet it, without looking at the social impact that this will have. So of course we're always improving. We've had our ups and downs, and we're still improving. We recognize that there is much to improve, but I think when everyone is working together, you set this kind of consistency where you don't you don't allow for any fluctuations because everyone already agreed before. So there's no, great fluctuation on that. I think that helps a lot. This really inclusive type of public policy helps.
Amazing, amazing. I mean, there was another question that was also addressing consumer acceptance. And I mean, one of the critical aspects of renewable energy and consumer acceptance is always costs. Um, I mean, is one of the reasons for the success in Brazil also related to the fact that you're able to deliver renewable energy at a very competitive cost?
Yes. So, for example, in terms of consumer acceptance, we try to improve our communication on the benefits of bioenergy, but the fact that it's economically viable really helps. So, depending on the region in Brazil, it is more efficient and cost effective for the consumer to fill their tank with 100% ethanol. So, depending on that year's crop and the price of ethanol that year, it will be more cost effective. So the consumer doesn't have necessarily to think about the sustainability and the emissions reductions effects, like, oh, I want to emit less with my car, so I'm going to put ethanol. It just costs less for them to put ethanol in the car. And the same goes with having a 30% blend in gasoline. So the consumer doesn't necessarily have to know that that there's 30% ethanol in the gasoline, but his car works on it. It actually improves efficiency and quality, and we do the whole market evaluation that it's gonna generate jobs and sustainable development in the producing regions without affecting the price so much. So gasoline may be like not even 1 cent more expensive because of the 30% blend. So the consumer won't feel it. So I think that's why there's not much question from the consumer side. Oh, I'm filling my car with ethanol, because it doesn't really, it's cost effective and it won't affect his vehicle. So
Right.
that's why it works. You don't have to convince them that the
Yes.
sustainability is important. Yeah.
Makes sense. Thanks a lot, Otavio. That was really interesting. And I'm very glad to announce now our final speaker, Glaucia Mendes Souza. She is professor at the University of Sao Paulo. And Glaucia will give us the view of science on bioenergy use. Please, Glaucia, floor is yours.
Okay, thank you very much. Let me share my screen. Yes, can you see it?
Yes, it works perfectly. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Christian. All the speakers that gave the settings for my presentation. Now a lot has been already talked about on policy and the demands of the sector for biofuels production, next steps. But I want to step back a little bit and talk about sustainability aspects. So my presentation will be based on a lot of content that we developed for a fact sheet. This was done specifically when we had to discuss marine biofuels for the IMO last April decision to go into a legally binding agreement to decarbonize navigation. But a lot of what I will be talking about refers to all biofuels. So it will be a more broad view. The idea behind this fact sheet was to inform and provide clarification on the potential and sustainability of biofuels. The focus is on biofuels that can be produced sustainably with sufficient capacity to be relevant for decarbonization. Here I say maritime, but also aviation and the very, very hard land transport, heavy-duty land transport sector as well. Present the Brazilian model of agriculture and its technological developments, and show how bioenergy is generating more than climate change mitigation technologies, but also generating socioeconomic impacts that are very aligned with the Sustainable Development Goals without the need for a lot of land. and also discuss the potential for biofuel production beyond Brazil. Of course, we can only fully deploy bioenergy if we go globally with it, and there is quite a lot of potential, as we found out in the Global South. So the fact sheet covers all aspects of biofuels, feedstocks, biofuels production, GHG emissions, land use, deployment. I forgot to mention, but the link here and this QR code leads to the documentation of this fact sheet and all of its references. We also talk about emissions, land use, and deployment. We base this study on open access, high impact scientific literature, also major reports such as the IEA reports, the IEA Bioenergy reports, IRENA, IEA last year produced a carbon accounting report to help the G20 in its energy transition work group to define the priorities and recommendations for policy making on this effort. IRENA also prepared a report for the G7 to decarbonize hard-to-abate sectors, and EPE has just launched year 2024 analysis of current biofuels outlook for Brazil. So this might be something that you're interested as well. Well, the motivation, of course, bioenergy is much talked about in regards to its capacity to decrease emissions. We have a very steep ramping up on our way if we are to keep on the net zero pathway until 2050. IEA calculates that we have by 2030 to grow biofuels 2.5 times, and by 2050 in the shipping and aviation, including here by hydrogen and hydrogen-based fuels, we need to ramp up from 1% today to 80% by 2050. So it's quite a lot of growth that we need to achieve. The idea, and I will come back to this number in the end, is to displace, to avoid 800 million tons of fossil CO2, or 10% of today's global transport emissions. But as I mentioned, we do need to take into consideration that this transition needs to be just, and that bioenergy can contribute with a just energy transition due to these multiple effects it has on many sectors of our society, contributes to energy security, food security, and also sustainable development. So the Brazilian contribution to decarbonization of transportation was used as an example, but we see, as I will show in the end of my presentation, that this might apply to other countries that have similar conditions if adapted to their local context. Brazil has now achieved a 50% renewable energy matrix, and 16% of this comes from sugarcane and another 16% from other biomass sources. Our electricity is 88% renewable. Our transportation is now 25% renewable, and much of this because we are using biofuels. In the last 50 years, from 75 up to last year, ethanol displaced 1.4 billion tons of CO2 equivalent, and biodiesel 0.2 billion. And a lot of this, in the case of ethanol, was made possible because we have a flex fleet. We have flex fuel vehicles fleet. 80% of our vehicles can run on 100% of ethanol. We, as have been talked before me, We have legislation in place that is crucial to guarantee this journey. Now, more recently, the Fuel of the Future legislation, and the target is to avoid by 2037 700 million tons of CO2. We are currently using E30 and B15. It's expected that we increase biodiesel to 20% by 2030. And in parallel to all of this, biofuels expansion taking place in Brazil, we also became a large large producer of food commodities. This was possible because pasture intensification freed up land, and also because we developed second cropping technologies. So it was not because we expanded a lot on land use, but that we expanded on land use efficiency. Okay, the expansion of biofuels crops occurred predominantly over degraded lands and pastures. This added soil to carbon to the soils and recovered degraded soils. And also in parallel, we had over these 50 years the establishment of our forest code. Brazil preserves 66% of its territory with native vegetation. We use 8% for agriculture, 21% for pastures, and 4% for urban areas. We did look at the science, what was happening in the discussion of food versus fuel. This has been going on for so long that now we have a great body of literature available to compare and see what's really happening. And these authors here evaluated 224 papers that looked if there wasn't a difference on food security depending if the bioenergy crop was edible versus non-edible. So the use of food crops versus the use of residues, and so on. They looked at food availability, food prices, food production, and they concluded there is no correlation between the type of bioenergy feedstock being edible, inedible, of both edible and inedible, and food security. No correlation, okay? There are some correlations though. For instance, on food availability, 2/3 of the articles reported positive effects on food availability or no effects. And when you look at the household scale, the effects are positive. Food prices, negative effects of bioenergy on food price were concentrated, and this is 3/4 of all articles, on countries with high social development index. When you look at food production, bioenergy has positive effects on food production in low social development index countries. This is most of the global south and at the household scale. Bioenergy on low social development index countries has no effect on food prices. Then, this is something interesting. The studies that report a negative effect are most commonly based on modeling. And when you actually look at observed data, real world data, the reporting of negative impacts was lower. So this was quite interesting to see, so well organized by these authors. And then we decided to look at the observed effects in the Brazilian culture, in the Brazilian context of things that could contribute to food security and that have changed by biofuels production. So we see associated to biofuels production in Brazil, increased energy access, increased agricultural infrastructure, increased agriculture modernization, improved soil quality, and improved purchasing power. The most common cause of food insecurity is poverty. Okay, so this is a very important point. Together with purchasing power, we see a lot of socioeconomic indicators improving: education, wages, type of work, the outlook of the next generation of farmers and producers associated with biofuels production, increasing GDP, increased involvement of small producers, and increased job opportunities. So all of these have a large impact on our capacity to purchase food and other goods. Also, especially in the case of sugarcane, cane electricity can now power more than 10.8 million homes in Brazil. This increased energy access in rural regions. This is so the mills make more energy than they use, and they export it to the grid. And again, here is a very strong correlation. Human Development Index is it's strongly correlated with energy consumption per capita, okay? And 750 million people do not have electricity in the world, mostly in rural areas. So this is something that bioenergy contributed to decrease and increase energy equality in Brazil. We also see associated with bringing added value to agriculture in Brazil, when you produce also energy, the benefit of improving agricultural modernization. There are so many practices that we have already established that are good for the soil, good for the environment, and profitable. So it brings more economic gains when you add, for instance, second cropping technologies to produce, let's say, corn. Most of the corn in Brazil that has been increasing, we became top exporter of corn in the world during this period, comes from second cropping, okay? You see this total production in orange on the graph in the left, and you see decreasing first cropping, increasing second cropping, and the beginning of a third cropping practice in Brazil. Most of the corn ethanol being produced in Brazil is from second cropping of corn. We also contributed to recuperating our soils. 20 years ago, on the left is our map of land degradation, and this is overlaid to the right with the substitution of these lands with sugarcane. 98% of sugarcane expansion has occurred over degraded pastures, and now we see in many regions no signs of degradation. So you can use now this land for food or for other products if needed. So in these 20 years of regenerating these pasture lands, we have the amount of avoided emissions corresponding to around 1.4 billion trees. It is as if we have reforested 1 million football fields during this time, and we continue doing this. Another thing that it has that contributes for Brazilian biofuel sustainability is that it's very low in emissions because we save on fertilizers, and this comes because we are integrating legume species together with the energy crops. So you have corn succeeded by soy or sugarcane rotated with peanuts. You can do this with brachiaria. You can do this with canola. You can do several different schemes that reduces emissions and the need to add fertilizers, because legume species can fix nitrogen. They have beneficial association with nitrificating bacteria that allows for the need to add less fertilizers, which is, when you make a life cycle analysis, the highest contributor to emissions from planting. So biofuels made in Brazil can decrease up to 84% of emissions. And if we do carbon capture and sequestration or carbon capture and use, we can even get to negative or close to zero or negative emissions. So just to make sure that we have an added benefit also on the food production side, you should be aware that Brazilian food items fed 900 million people in the world last year. This is around 11% of the world's population. Our crops are also used to produce meat, milk, eggs in several countries. So it is possible to do both food, feed, and fuels. We do most of our ethanol nowadays from sugarcane, but corn has been integrated increasingly from second cropping into the sugarcane scheme. And this has a very nice fit with the way sugarcane grows, because we have intercropping months when we cannot harvest sugarcane. It's not yet mature. And so this harvesting of sugarcane happens during the months where you see the green bars, and then you have the red bars, which is the months that we are producing corn ethanol that complements sugarcane ethanol. And now we can have it all throughout the year. We don't have to sacrifice a couple of months where we don't have ethanol offered anymore. As I mentioned, we have the Brazilian territory is largely preserved in forests, 66%. And we have our legislation, the RenovaBio program, that is attached to that. So you will not be able to be certified for reducing emissions if you have incurred in deforestation under the RenovaBio code. I'm running out of time, so I will skip this slide and I just go to the last two slides. So we looked at all the policies in emerging economies across the global south and tried to calculate how much can we decrease of emissions, how much the global south can contribute to the IEA demand that we avoid 800 million tons of CO2. We looked at Argentina, Brazil, China, Colombia, Ethiopia, Guatemala, India, Indonesia, Malaysia, South Africa, and Thailand. We look at how much pasture land they have. We look at their crop yields. These are countries that are growing very fast with large populations, and they are increasing their energy needs. Our conclusions is that they could be producing over 100 billion liters of biodiesel and ethanol, and together these 11 countries could avoid 300 million tons in a moderate scenario of emissions, almost half of what IEA is saying. So I think there is quite a lot of potential to continue growing biofuels production in the world sustainably. So I finish my presentation. I just wanted to mention that countries are aware and gathering together to discuss these issues, such as in the Global Biofuels Alliance. And thank you very much for the opportunity to share this work with you.
Thank you so much, Glaucia. Thank you so much. That was amazing. And I think you have been able to address a number of misconceptions that are very widely spread, and they're still haunting our industry. You have been showing that bioenergy use can be perfectly aligned with sustainability goals and support them in a very effective way. And I must say, I have been able to travel to Brazil last year, and I was deeply impressed by the level of professionality that is applied in managing the land, in planting, in recycling nutrients, in ensuring that the amount of pesticides that are used are minimized, that most of the fertilizers produced by the factories themselves that are producing the ethanol. So it is really an amazing example. I cannot see any new questions, except that there are people keen to learn more. They are applauding to your presentations. Let me offer you a final statement to all three of you, and then close this webinar. Bruno, any final observations that you would like to share?
Just like to thank you for the opportunity. It was great to share a little bit of what we know about Brazil, and also learn with Professor Glaucia, with the Ambassador Otávio Igreja. Was really delighted.
Super. Otávio.
Thank you very much. No, it was a pleasure to me. Glaucia's presentations, no matter how many times we see them, are always very eye-opening, and we always learn something new. So it was very nice. And just to say that we're thankful to always be invited and available as much as we can to cooperate with any institution abroad on this topic. Thank you very much, Christian.
Thank you so much, Otávio. Glaucia.
Well, thank you, Christian, WBA, and SPE for organizing this. It's great to see the triple helix here. We have academia, we have industry, and we have government working together. I think we have been able to move forward this important agenda. Thank you.
Brilliant. Thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, let me just make you aware that we will have our next webinar that will also look at the Brazilian experience, but from a different perspective. We will have a webinar on October the 7th to look at the Brazilian role in South-South cooperation in the field of biofuels. So we will focus more deeply on the possibilities for cooperation between Brazil and countries in the Southern Hemisphere. I think in the chat there has also been, yes, here it is. There is a link. Feel free to sign up and join us for our next webinar. You will be able to find the presentation, the slides on our website as of tomorrow, and the recording of this webinar. Thank you all for joining, and I wish you a great day. Goodbye.
Thank you.